Hello, you beautiful individuals. Today we are back in Kingdoms and Castles, really just as some kind of background. Because, as you could probably tell by the title, I want to talk about dealerships, car dealerships. They are, they can be an intimidating place if you've never been, and even if you have, they can still be. They're they're difficult to deal with if you don't know or you know never needed to go to one. But they don't have to be. And here's what I mean. So, as a little background, I have worked at a few of them, done both on the financial side and service side of dealing with cars and dealerships. I sold them for a while and various other jobs around the dealership. So I have a little bit of background into this. And the reason I bring it up is a friend of mine just bought a car. And when he did, he unfortunately, I wouldn't say he bought a lemon, but he might have. He doesn't know yet. So just 2 days after he bought it, it started having transmission issues. And obviously that concerned him. He just spent a fair amount of money on this car in the five figures. I won't say exactly how much. It is a used car, so that is to be expected, and it was sold as is. Now, this changes state to state, of course, but in Ohio, you essentially have 30 days still, even if it's an as is car. You still have some kind of protection slash warranty type thing. It's not exactly a warranty, but kind of. Basically, you can return it. Mind you, you won't get all your money back. You will still lose, you know, most of it, not most of it, some of it, and like tax, title, and all the other stupid fees. Like, there's tax, title, there's dealership fees, there's all kinds of stuff they like to tack on to try to make as much money as they can. That being said, used cars are not very profitable. You're talking rarely. I mean, if you were selling a used car at a dealership and it had like 2 grand of profit, say, that's pretty awesome. You're doing good, like really good, and that's on the front end. In the back end, that's where the financing happens, and that's why most dealerships they would rather you buy a car that way as opposed to just paying for cash, which is what he did. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Paying cash for a car can be very useful. You that's how you will save the most money, as opposed to you know financing it. Now, if you are going to financing a used car is better than financing a new one, kind of. You get a much better warranty and various other perks with new cars, but you do have to have full coverage insurance. Well, you do have to, at least in Ohio, on used cars as well. But still, everything's a little more expensive for new cars. But you don't have to usually worry about service, so that saves you. Even things that aren't covered under warranty, it's a new car, not that much usually is going to go wrong, at least for the first, 50 to 100,000 miles, depending on the car, of course, and just luck. So, he is obviously worried because he just bought this. It is still under this 30-day warranty type protection thing, but he doesn't want to get stuck with a car that he just spent all this money on and then have to dump more money into it, especially when it comes to transmissions. Those can get very expensive very fast. I mean, if you have to replace one, you're spending at least 3 4 grand, and that's if you're lucky. His situation's a little different. He most likely just needs a new transmission filter and some new fluid, which normally you wouldn't want to touch a transmission at all if you don't have to. But with what his is doing, it's slipping and not engaging in a drive properly. So unfortunately, that's when you do have to mess with them, and that things can get real messy real fast. If you ever do have to work on a transmission, definitely try to have somebody that's done it before there, or at least follow some kind of video or whatever to the T. Other things have some leeway, and you can mess up a little bit, and it's not a big deal. Transmissions are not like that. that being said, he what he's attempting to do is he wants them to fix it, understandably. They have been ignoring him. They've lied to him a few times, and obviously, I'm not going to say any names or nothing like that. This isn't that kind of thing. I just want to basically give some tips to how you can avoid this. First off, understand that part of it is just luck. I mean, it's luck of the draw. Sometimes you just end up buying a lemon. It sucks, but it happens. A good way to avoid it, of course, is test drive, test drive, test drive multiple times, which he did. One thing he didn't do that he should have is take it to a mechanic before he bought it, which you are more than allowed to do. Obviously, talk to the dealership first. You don't want to be gone with their car for hours, but and try to set it up with whoever your trusted mechanic is. That's a good way to do it, just so they can give it a once over and really reassure you that you're not making a bad purchase. If you do take it to a mechanic, it all checks out, and you buy it, and something still goes wrong, because it can happen, then you can either purchase an extended warranty, even on used cars, which will protect you on certain things, usually just the drivetrain, or in his situation, he is under that 30-day kind of protection thing. So he could return it, or most likely they'll work with him to fix it. He is a business owner, a local business owner, in the same area that the dealership is, so they're going to want to help him out more. I mean, his influence does matter. It's a small town, and it can really hurt that business, that dealership. I mean, his opinion. And he could definitely be a repeat customer. Now, the reason they're probably avoiding him is, one, like I said, he bought the car with cash. They've already most likely lost money on his car. Usually used cars don't have a high profit margin to begin with. They put new bearings on, new brakes for him, a couple other little things, so they're already probably in the hole, or just barely breaking even, maybe making a very, very, very minimal profit. So I'm not saying I understand, but from working in that profession, I understand what they're doing. I don't agree with it, and I think it's wrong, but I get why they're trying to avoid them. They're trying to not lose any more money. Unfortunately, it's just how it goes sometimes. Just like you can lose money, so can dealerships, and they do. Dealerships, a lot of people think of dealerships as they're just constantly ripping people off, and their prices are so high, and that is partially true. Some dealerships do, and it's unfortunate, but most of the time, the dealerships just aren't working with that much profit margin, especially with new cars. I mean, new cars, if it wasn't for all the rebates and various kickbacks that they get, especially through financing, they would essentially make nothing on new cars. Used cars are more profitable, but pretty much only if you're financing. If you're buying outright, then it's not profitable, and it's why, if any of you have bought a car outright from a dealership, probably didn't have the greatest experience, or at least the most friendly, I would say. And again, this is not true for every dealership. There's so many different situations. So, a good thing you can do, first off, is don't get too angry at the salesperson. Understand that they have very, very limited influence. They don't, most of the time, they can't even give you a number, a price. That's why a lot of times you see them running back and forth with the general manager and various other things. They don't have any power or influence in that. They're essentially, think of a salesman, honestly, as like a host at a restaurant. They're just taking you to your seat. They're really there to keep you company, keep you happy, and smile at you while you buy the car. And again, not always the case. Some dealerships are different, and unfortunately, this one's not. This is a bigger dealership. They sell mostly new cars, but they of course have a fairly decent sized used car market as well. They don't have a lot of competition. If anything, I would say realistically, as far as new cars go, they have zero competition, because there's no other dealerships that sell their brand of car within the immediate area. I mean, of course, a county or two over and stuff, but not within this immediate area. So they're doing pretty well, and they don't do this kind of thing on purpose. Usually, the salesman that is ignoring him on purpose, and that's unfortunate. That's just being a bad salesman. And again, it might not be the case. I can't say that for sure. That's just what I'm presuming from knowing and being inside of that. They also could just be getting stonewalled by their general manager, finance, or service manager. But I know this dealership, and I know the general manager and the service manager, so I don't think that's the case. I think the salesman is just avoiding him and trying to not deal with what he sees as an annoying customer. It's unfortunate, but that's just how it is. If you buy cash, I mean, like I said, depending on how they get paid there, if they get commission, he's getting next to nothing. It could be based on number of units sold, which in that case it would help him. But either way, he's done. Like he sold the car, he has no more care or need to follow up. He should. That is the right thing to do, but it's not what everyone does. The general manager, they they worry more about the front end of things, and think of it like the front of house of a restaurant, if you will. They worry about the main profit, the first profit, the profit of how much they bought the car for, how much they can sell the car for. The finance manager worries about the back end. That's the financing, the getting you a loan and making their money off that. And then the service manager, of course, he wants you to come back too. They want to work on your car, but they want you to pay for it. They don't want to do warranty work. It doesn't really do much for them. It doesn't help their bottom end. So in reality, this is he's my friend is essentially the worst customer possible, and no fault to his own. Like he didn't do anything wrong, and if you're in this situation, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just from their eyes, you're not a good customer because they didn't make any money off you. You're probably not returning, and even if they do any more service, once again, not making much money or any money off of it. So all around, they don't want to deal with them, but they need to, and they should. Ways you can avoid this: for one, don't go to dealerships. That's partially a joke. I mean, if you want a new car, you kind of have to, but if you're in a used car market, there is nothing wrong with buying off of an average Joe, just another person. It's honestly no different than a dealership, and most of the time, you can get a much better deal off of an individual. Same with selling a car. You pretty much any dealership or most will buy cars just outright. Just buy your car without you buying one. But you're not going to make as much as you could if you sold it to an individual. So it's hit or miss. Dealerships are kind of a necessary evil, but not necessarily evil. They don't do this on purpose. They're just a business like anyone else. They're trying to make money, and it's understandable. Now, that being said, I still don't agree with how they treated him, and especially the follow up. I mean, he's given them more than enough time to deal with this, a week, which, not saying they should have had it fixed in a week, but they should have at least given him some kind of answer or reassurance, and they haven't. Hopefully tomorrow he is going to, fix that by following my advice, which was to go and actually talk to someone in person. Don't rely on the salesman. If a salesman's ignoring you, call in and try to talk to the general manager or the finance manager or the service manager, depending on your situation. If that doesn't work, go there. Talk to them in person. One of them is going to be there. There's no situation in which a finance, general, and service manager will all be missing on the same day, unless it's weirdly the same person, which in some small dealerships it could be. This is not a small dealership. This is a fairly large one. They sell roughly around 200 to 300 cars a month, so nothing insane, but still pretty decent. Most dealerships, if they're selling 100 cars a month, they're pretty happy. And a lot of dealerships sell a lot less than that, especially used car lots. Now, the biggest and most important thing is, well, a few most important things. One, don't be intimidated. They're just humans like you. Just because they're a dealership, that doesn't mean anything. Two, don't get angry. Try to keep your cool. It's, once again, they're humans like you. They're fallible, they can make mistakes, and most of the time they will try to fix them. Three, don't be afraid to be stern. Just because I say don't get angry doesn't mean you shouldn't be stern or firm. There is, like, you shouldn't be afraid to want to, spend your money correctly and not get ripped off. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't deserve to be ripped off. Neither does the dealership. But they are selling the cars, so ultimately they are responsible. Understand that as a buyer, you have way more power than you might think. They will bend to whatever you want if you're going to spend money. And especially if you've already spent money, they might try to not give you what you want, but they will. You just have to know what to say and how to ask. One, don't admit a whole lot. Tell them problems, but don't use words like sometimes or all the time. Just tell them the issue, but don't give them a frequency. Unless it is literally all the time. I mean, that's different. But never say sometimes, because then they'll use that against you. Even all the time, they can try. It's a weird side note. But anyway, don't don't be afraid to say you're going to get a lawyer or something involved. You don't have to by any means, but 9 out of 10 times, if you even threaten that, they're going to back down pretty quick. Don't be afraid to return your car. If it comes to that, you can return it. You might lose some money, but once again, they probably aren't going to let that happen. They're going to usually give you what you want, or at least a compromise that makes everyone happy. They don't want you to return the car. That's not convenient for them. So the biggest thing, just do your research, especially on the car. Look up forums about the car. Like, every car make and model has a forum, and you will find people who have owned that car and lived with it. See what they say. See what the most common problems are. Test drive it multiple times. I don't care if you're buying $1,000 beater. Test drive it multiple times on different days, preferably in different scenarios if you can. Highway, back roads, stop and go traffic. Check the oil, check all the fluids, check the tranny fluid if it's not a sealed system. Look at the air filter, make sure it's not filthy. Really, you should take it to a mechanic if you can. That's the best thing. But if you can't, get underneath. Look at the rust. Look at things like the front end components, tie rod ends, various other the bearings. If you can, jack it up. Grab that wheel on the top and bottom and try to shake it, and then on the side to side. Up and down, or on the top and bottom, that if it's shaking and making noise, usually a bearing. Side to side could be ball joint, tie rod ends, various other steering components and suspension parts. Hit some bumps. Go over some fairly decent bumps so you can feel if it's, feel the way it hits the bump and hear it. I mean, that's the most important thing. Listen. Like, when you're on test drives, do not play music. I know you want a good radio, and I'm not saying don't listen to it at all, but turn it off and really listen to the car. Let the steering wheel go. See if it veers left or right. Make some really hard turns in a parking lot as far as it'll steer both ways. See if you hear any knocking or clicking or any kind of noises like that. Rev it up a bit. There's a lot of things you can do. Obviously, always feel free to, comment or even email me if you want a more personal and specific questions answered. I'm happy to do that. It might take me a minute to get back, but I pretty much always answer every comment and email. Messages on social media, not the best. I don't always get on those, but YouTube and email 100% will always answer. It just might take me a minute, but usually not more than a day. I'm just trying to think more off the top of my head. I did have some things wrote down, but I've already went through those. I was just trying to think of anything else I might have missed. I probably did, but if you have anything to add, please, in the comments. If you've worked at a dealership add your, opinions, your experience. This isn't really meant to be an argument necessarily. I'm not knocking dealerships. I'm not saying they're a bad thing, because they're not. I mean, we need them. It's just how it works. I mean, I guess technically you don't. You could buy straight from a manufacturer, but it's just not how it is in America, at least, or pretty much anywhere around the world, unless you're buying like some really high-end fancy cars. But yeah, we're talking about your average person here. But yeah, it's another good tip, at least in my opinion. Don't ever buy a new car. I know that sounds crazy, and a lot of you might not agree, but a brand new car, you're 99%, you're pretty much guaranteed you're going to lose money the moment you drive off the lot. It's kind of the case with all cars, but at least used cars, you can kind of get a chance of making your money back in a way. At least if you had to sell it, you could. Like if he chose to sell this car right now, he could probably get what he bought it for. I mean, it is a nice car. Unlikely, but he probably could if you found the right buyer. So try not to buy new cars. I mean, even if you buy one that's like a year old, that's fine. Just a brand new one. Yeah, the rebates and everything look enticing, but you're not doing well, money wise. Again, if you can afford it, whatever. No big deal. Go for it. I understand that, and I understand the security of buying a new car. But if it's not going to make that much of a difference, buy just a year old with like, you know, 30 to 50,000 miles on it. A couple years old. For one, cars need broken in. Cars aren't really like when they're new. It's hard to tell anything about them. You really want them to have some miles on them. But again, it's kind of a personal opinion. As I said though, if you have any questions or want advice personally or more specific situations, definitely feel free to reach out. I'll be happy to do that. And yeah, that's it. Just wanted to go over that. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and until next time.